Okay, good morning and welcome to all, especially the members of the public, to this meeting of the Development Committee of Northern District Council on the 29th of July 2021. For those who haven't attended a meeting previously, members are sitting arranged in front of me, and I have officers left and right who I'll ask to introduce themselves in a moment, and other officers will attend virtually to present papers on the relevant applications. If I could ask officers to introduce themselves, starting with Officer Rowson, please.
Thank you, Chairman. My name is Philip Rowson. I am the Assistant Director of Planning at North Norfolk. Good morning, all.
Sorry, no. Matt Stonebridge, Democratic Services.
Morning, everybody. My name is Noel Doran. I'm a solicitor, legal advisor to the committee this morning.
And on the far side, we have Linda Yarham of Democratic Services, who will be taking the minutes and keeping this in order if we get into silly things for standing orders. Thank you. Okay, next item is to receive apologies for absence and any substitute members. Linda.
Thank you, Chair. I have apologies this morning from Councillor Grove Jones with Councillor Toy as her substitute. Also, I have apologies from Councillor Stockton and Councillor Varley without substitutes. They were unable to get any. Thank you.
Thank you. Item 3 is to approve the minutes of the meeting of Thursday, 1st of July, which have been circulated separately to members. Just a check for accuracy, please. Page 1, page 2, page 3, 4, 5, and 6. No sign there was an accurate record of that meeting. Okay. Item 4, items of urgent business. I have none notified to me.
No urgent items to carry, Chairman.
Thank you. Order of business will be slightly different to that on the published agenda. We will take agenda item 7 first, followed by agenda item 8, then 11, then item 10, and we'll finish up with item 9, high carrying. That just makes it easier for some of the public speakers to not have to sit around till the end of the meeting. Item 6, declarations of interest. Does any member have a declaration of interest? Councillor Toy.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yes, not a declaration of interest, but as a portfolio holder, it will be item 10, Ingham. I've just been involved, but only in procedural, in guiding process. That's all, not in any other respect.
Thank you.
Okay.
Unless we're advised otherwise, I see no reason why you shouldn't be able to speak on that.
Just for information purposes, Mr. Chairman, I have an appointment in Norwich this afternoon, so I will have to leave at 12:15, but I've no interest to declare. It's just to announce that I may have to leave the meeting early if we run past midday.
I would hope not.
So do I. Thank you.
Right, so let us move on to the agenda item. So we begin with the application Hedgerow PF/20/1345, construction of 12 dwellings with associated parking, landscape and infrastructure, land south of Wells Road, Hedgerow. And I believe Officer Mann is presenting on this one.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Can you hear me okay? Just want to check everything's working, but morning members, if you can. I would like to just share my screen in a second. Hopefully that will work. So I'm going to take you through this morning application PF 201345, which is Wells Road, Hedgerow. The report in your agenda pack starts on page 3 of the report. Bear with me a second while I just share my screen. Hopefully that works. There we go. Okay, so hoping that you can see the site layout there. So the application site is situated on Wells Road at Hindringham. So the site is situated within the countryside as defined within the core strategy, opposite to the school, as you can see on this map. The site itself is former agricultural land with existing properties to the east and the west of the site. The proposal itself is for 12 dwellings, 8 affordables and 4 market dwellings, a mix of 6 bungalows and 6 two-storey dwellings. I should say, first of all, that this is subject to a viability assessment, which has demonstrated the need for those 4 market dwellings to facilitate the 8 affordables on site, so the 7 affordable rented and the 1 shared ownership dwelling. This viability study has also demonstrated that the open space contributions can also not be made in terms of a viable scheme. This is set out on page 10 of your agenda pack, and obviously as a result represents a departure from policy CT2, which is also set out on pages 30 and 21 of your agenda. So coming to the principle of development, first of all, so the delivery of rural exception schemes is sort of set out in accordance with the criteria in policy H03. This scheme, obviously having some market dwellings, would represent, but would not be in strict accordance with that, representing a sort of cross-subsidy scheme. However, as already demonstrated, set out by a viability study to support this, and this is set out on pages 12 and 13 of your report. The houses proposed on this site, as I said, it's a mix of bungalows and houses. So obviously the bungalows being adaptable for the elderly and infirm, and detail of this is set out on pages 13 and 14 of your report, or of your agenda, sorry. The design itself is of a high quality in accordance with policies EN4 and EN6, and this is set out on pages 15 to 19 of your agenda. So I should mention also in regard to EN6, they've taken a fabric first approach, so high quality materials to reduce thermal loss, and then the provision of air source heat pumps also on all of these, which will be confirmed or secured through condition on the planning application. This is set out on page 35 of your agenda. There were some initial concerns in regard to residential amenity, so I'll just change the layout plan so you can see the nearby dwellings. But subsequently, the applicant, through careful consideration, has changed the layout of the scheme, replacing some dwellings, and it's now considered to be in accordance with policy EN4. This is set out on pages 19 to 21 of your agenda pack. The next sort of main consideration, and one of the early considerations that we made, was the loss of the hedgerow on the front of the site, and also the need for the highways viability displays. So as you can see on this landscape plan, the sort of red area is what is proposed to be removed. The dark green is what is proposed to be retained, and the light green is the new additional landscaping. So I should point out to members that there were sort of various iterations and discussions had with landscape colleagues and highways officers to try and come to a solution that would not reduce the amount of affordable houses on site, whilst also seeking to preserve as much of that hedgerow as possible, and also providing those visibility displays. So as a result, the number of access points to the site was reduced, and the hedgerow provided has been sort of beefed up to the south, albeit there is still substantial loss of hedgerow along that northern part of the site. It's also proposed to have hedgerow along the southern and the eastern boundaries, with some wildlife area there. So as a result of this, it is acknowledged in the report on pages 23 to 28 under the landscape and ecology section, and also on pages 28 and 29 under the highways section, that this would result in the loss of large amounts of landscaping, and that would have ecological benefits, well, not benefits, ecological harm on the site, would represent a departure from policies EN2 and EN9 in the short term. However, obviously, as this hedgerow grows up, that mitigation would then be in place over time. The next issue that I'd like to come on to and just draw your attention to is that there's been lots of concern raised regarding flood risk on the site. So in terms of the site itself, it's situated within flood zone 1. There is some surface water flooding nearby on the Wells Road, mainly further to the west of the site. There's no surface water flooding from EA mapping on the site itself. However, concerns been raised in regard mainly to the foul network and the flooding issues arising from that. So first of all, I would say on site itself, they're proposing permeable paving on the access road itself and the parking areas. They're also proposing 4 soakaways, which the lead local flood authority have raised no objection to in regard to sort of soakaway times, etc. In regard to the foul network itself, so Anglian Water initially confirmed that there was capacity in the network to take the flows from this development. Subsequently, as a result of the concern raised locally, we went back to Anglian Water, who sort of basically said that they would look into the problem and they're going to look at a cleaning, maintenance and CCTV survey work to be carried out. We were told July, August of this year. As a result of this, we've put in an informative note into this, which would accompany this report that's set out on page 38 of your agenda. Further to this, we have also sent a letter to Anglian Water to sort of try and get them to ensure that they will carry out these works. But their latest comment basically says that there is capacity for the flows on this site. This site mitigating its own surface water impact is not considered to have an impact on the foul network with surface water going into that, and they've stated that it does have capacity for these flows. This is all set out on pages 31 to 34 of your agenda. So coming on to the recommendation, it is one for approval, albeit it's a departure, as I've said, from policies HO3, CT2, EN2 and EN9. However, the benefits of the scheme are set out on page 37 of your agenda. So the provision of the affordable homes meeting local need, the 4 market houses to boost the local economy, the sort of fabric first building approach and the air source heat pumps providing high environmental standards on the houses themselves, obviously the job creation during construction, and then the support to the local economy. So subject to the conditions that are set out on pages 37 and 38 of your report and the informative note, as already mentioned, the recommendation is one for approval. Happy to take any questions that you may have. Thank you.
Thank you, James. Very comprehensive. That was your report. Officer Wright, do you have anything to add on the drainage issues?
Chairman, I feel the important point to note for members of the public attending today is that a key issue here turns on the matter of foul water drainage. The difficulty our officers have faced in this matter is that Anglian Water are saying in their formal consultation on this application that there is capacity in the system as it currently stands to absorb the discharge from this proposal. They have undertaken to do remedial works on that local network. That is something that they have undertaken, but they say, as I stressed earlier on, that this proposal can be accommodated within the existing network. On that basis, Chairman, we spoke at briefing about the potential for introducing a condition that may require the delay of this development until those works have been completed. As your assistant director this morning, I regret I could not technically support such a condition, because the matter is one which we're told by the technical consultee is within the capacity of the existing system. It's frustrating, Chairman, that we find ourselves debating matters of what are essentially Anglian Water business at this committee, but we have to reflect on the fact that foul water discharge remains a material planning consideration. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Officer Rice. I'm glad for that additional context there. We now move to public speakers. I have a Mr. Steve Dye, Parish Chairman. Come to the end. There's a microphone there to speak from that point. You'll have 3 minutes, which will be timed by Linda. Okay.
Right. Good morning, everybody. Mr. Chairman, committee members. I have 3 points I would like to very briefly highlight reference to this. The objections obviously are duly noted. First of all, page 5.4 under the heading of need. Although tenants may be brought in from immediately surrounding villages, etc., there is a strong possibility that occupants should be drawn from urban areas and creating isolation and discontentment, thus leading to antisocial behaviour, as has been suggested by the local police force. Point 2, a reptile survey allegedly undertaken June of this year. First of all, I have to underline the fact that why on earth, if you are looking for reptiles in growing vegetation, would you send a contractor in less than a month before that survey to flatten everything down to ground level? I suggest that was rather divisive and annoying, that it is inaccurate and was not done professionally. Also, 3 immediately adjacent properties currently, as of today, containing in their ponds smooth newts. I am aware of the fact that one of the developments at Norwich was, as in the Norwich Evening News, declared that everything had to be rethought when they found in immediately adjacent properties smooth newts. Point 3, and my last point, open spaces. We were told that initially the policy suggested that £48,000 fee should be paid to the locality because of the shortage of certain amenities. Apparently, Broadland have said that it would make the development unviable. I have to say, having stood with two council colleagues on site watching raw sewage bubbling across agricultural land, Mr. Mumford Smith then sided up to me and offered up to £30,000 to try and remedy the problem to get it out of the way. Now, I think that's farcical. Anyway, thank you very much for the time. That's all I have to say.
Thank you, Mr. Dye. We have no objecting speakers. I have 1 supporting speaker, Mr. Ed Mumford Smith from Broadland Group. You will also have 3 minutes.
Good morning. Just like to start by thanking the officers who worked very hard over the last 11 months to find a compromise solution between the many sort of overlapping policy issues, particularly around landscape and ecology. We're very pleased to present this proposal today, which is a continuation of our theme that we've been working on since I became involved in working in North Norfolk about 18 years ago to deliver high quality, affordable housing in rural areas. We are the 2nd largest social landlord in North Norfolk, and we have a track record of working with older people, and this design reflects our attempt to reduce social isolation by developing single-storey buildings, bungalows around courtyards to allow interaction between local people. Just picking up on the points of Councillor Dye, the viability assessment, we have inputs of public subsidy from Homes England, which isn't quite enough to develop the high quality homes and deal with the abnormal costs of developing in North Norfolk. So we introduced an element of market housing in accordance with the NPPF policy to generate cross subsidy to manage the demands on the public purse. In this instance, we put forward a proposal of basically a third market to cross subsidise 2/3 affordable. The Elm is just kind of across the road and around the corner, has a large area of open space, and we felt that there wasn't necessarily the need for additional provision in the village. So we presented this proposal, as you've seen. There is the potential to convert affordable housing into market housing. To do that, we could have converted an affordable plot to market to pay that 48,000. Equally, the conversation that I had with Councillor Dye was to convert an affordable home to market to create additional subsidy towards a repair of this drain, and we are happy to do that. Thank you.
Thank you. And we now come into the local member, Councillor Kershaw.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I did call this in. I feel the foul water situation is contentious, and I know that's not key to the planning application. I'm pleased to see that the revision of the planning has come forward. Although Highways have withdrawn their objection, they would have preferred a better scheme, it's stated here, and there will be increased congestion around the school, which is concerning. I'm also concerned that the reptile survey, when carried out, was preceded by the site being closely mowed, so it's not surprising no great crested newts were found, at least in one piece. My main concern, however, and this is mirrored by the parish council and residents, is the situation with foul water drainage. The issue of drains backing up and overflowing was raised in October 2020, and a meeting was held with the PC and Anglian Water in correspondence between NNDC and Anglian Water with regard to root systems breaking through into drains. Anglian Water are urgently carrying out camera checks of the system, it was said at the time. Apparently, this did not happen then or through the winter due to weather conditions. On page 34, Anglian Water confirmed that there are some outstanding maintenance works to be done involving cleaning out and CCT camera works scheduled for July, August 2021. I believe some of the tanks along America's Drift have been cleaned out, and in June of this year, the sewer overflowed yet again, which would indicate that no improvements have been made to date. I visited various sites with the parish council and councillors where effluent was escaping on February 16th, 2021. Water and effluent was flowing with force from inspection covers up to 2 feet high in a fountain and running into drainage ditches and then into the River Stiffkey. And this was effluent. There was no standing water in the fields at the time, and the ditches were clean and flowing. So there was no waterlogging and there was no surface water in this, it was effluent. This would suggest the pipe work is blocked between the end of America's Drift and Binham, which is part of the system and is pumped through to Binham. Is this remedial work going to include this section across the farmland? We haven't been told. I would propose that this application is deferred until Anglian Water can prove to the parish council's satisfaction that the foul water drainage system is capable of handling the amount of effluent and water, and that the maintenance work has been carried out as promised, with the risk to proceed with extra development with the risk that foul water could still enter the River Stiffkey would seem to me irresponsible and environmentally damaging. So I would move to defer this application. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Morning, everyone. Yes, I'm prepared to second Councillor Kershaw's proposal. We know from past experience that the relationship between Anglian Water and developers is a difficult one on several sites around the district. I'm sure if Councillor Grove-Jones was present this morning, she'd be waxing lyrical about the problems in Stalham with surface water and foul water drainage. My concern is, I see in the consultee remarks from Anglian Water that they are prepared to divert foul sewers as and when necessary. I would like to see the committee recommend that a condition is put into any consent that is granted in the future if this issue is resolved, that the diversion actually does take place, not that it normally and therefore could or could not take place, that it must take place. The diversion must happen before the first unit is occupied. I've also got a query about Hindringham as a site. It's not a small growth village. If we were talking about an application for an individual dwelling, it may well be that that dwelling would be refused consent because it's not in a sustainable location. So I'm not entirely sure whether this is the right site. I do see that there is a need for affordable housing. There are over 60 people or so on the list. And I'm not sure in my own mind whether that is a sufficient material consideration for this particular site. I'd like to thank finally Officer Tracy Meacham for a very good report and Officer James Mann for his presentation this morning. But I am content to second Councillor Kershaw's proposal, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Brown. We're therefore debating the motion to defer rather than directly the proposal to grant this at the moment. Correct on that? Thank you. Councillor Fitch-Tillett.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good morning, everybody. Set aside this particular thing, I think it's just highlighting the necessity for Anglian Water to separate foul sewage from surface water drainage. I'd just like that recorded, please. It is absolutely vital, and this has just highlighted the need.
Thank you. Councillor Pearce.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman. Morning, everybody. My learning colleagues here, I mean, I would have seconded without hesitation the deferral. And I also take note of what Councillor Fitch-Tillett has said. I think Anglian Water have got to get their act together. We are in the process as an authority of trying to get much needed social housing into as many villages as possible. And we're going to come up against this problem time and time again. I'm not talking about other applications now today. I'm talking about this one. This one needs all those rectifications for diversion to ease the surface water, the drainage before we can go ahead. In my belief, I've looked at this situation. I still think there's a case for good housing in the location for here for social housing, but we need to really cobble some motion to do as our learning colleague has said, get the foul water separated, get it sorted from surface water. We've also, just to add on top of that, we have just been hit with floods, downpours, and various parts of the country. What would happen if we got another one here? There's no good saying it won't, it could do. So therefore, I would agree with the deferral wholeheartedly. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Pearce. Councillor Toy.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, a lot's already been said. I find it incredible that irrespective of this plan application, that here we are in 2021 and we've got sewage running down streets. I mean, what century are we in? Rainwater should not be in foul water. It should not be there, and someone must have a responsibility for stopping that. Now, Anglian Water, if it's theirs that's the foul water, then surely they should be finding where the rainwater is getting in and resolving that. There's no question we have to defer this. And in fact, the question is, what are we going to do to support the people of Hindringham already suffering sewage running down their streets? It's not an acceptable thing. So I'm fully behind the deferral. I don't know if it's appropriate. I did want, there was a comment I wanted to make about the actual site in general, which may or may not be able to be looked at as we, if there is a deferral, if that is the choice that we take. I just felt that the site was squeezed. I'm very much for we need affordable homes, but they are homes. People are going to live there. And there was, you know, we've squeezed a bit of a garden here, we've squeezed a bit of a parking space there. We can't make a contribution for the viability. How about if we had one less affordable home? That would be my thoughts around that. One less affordable home, make it a much better environment, and would solve some of those issues in terms of the social squeezing people together and everything else. So I just wanted to make that comment as I reviewed the plans. That's what I felt about that. But no, deferral must be the way we should go. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Councillor Lloyd.
Thank you, Chair. I'm in support of the deferral as well, but on the application itself, I'd like to congratulate Broadland on the design quality that they've come up with on this. It's the kind of housing that we'd like to see in North Norfolk, and I hope more developers take note of those words I've just said. A little bit disappointed about the loss of Hedgerow, but I guess there must have been a reason why down the west side of the site we couldn't add a hedgerow. And furthermore, on the conditions, can we have consideration to replanting if hedgerow plants die? That was all. Thanks.
Thank you. Councillor Holiday.
I support the deferment. I mean, based on our experience in Clyde with Anglia Water, I would totally be worried about their statements that they have capacity. And what they do when they say they've got capacity is tanker the poo to the nearest largest facility day and night. And that's not our idea of capacity. I think the site is slightly tight. I agree with Councillor Toy on that. And I also worry slightly about hindering it. It has a school and that's it. And we are proposing to put some older people in, and there's a bus once a day. And you know, what happens when they want to go to the nearest GP, which is in Fakenham and or Wells, and it's may not be absolutely ideal for a large number of people. It's a lovely village to live in, but it may not have the facilities to make life comfortable.
Yeah. Councillor Yassini?
Yes, most of what I was going to say has been said, but I'd like to highlight what Councillor Nigel Lloyd said about the hedge. I have a note here that says, with time, that will grow, and so that will be fixed. Allow me to be honest. I find it the housing situation is very important also, and that can't be underestimated, and I find it a great shame that this will be deferred on the account of an Anglia Water issue. I'm just letting my feelings known.
Thank you, Councillor. Okay, are we finished then? We have a proposal then from Councillor Kershaw, seconded by Councillor Brown, to defer consideration of this application pending resolution of the foul water and drainage issues with Anglian Water.
Chairman, through you, there was a motion from Councillor Toy and supported by Councillor Holiday that spoke about a redesign of the layout of the site. And that could be an amendment to the motion that Councillor Kershaw has put forward. If Councillor Kershaw is minded to accept, then it may be we can take a single motion that enables us to go back to speak with Broadland on the matters of proving that there is a completed remedial work process agreed, a timeline agreed for the foul drainage, and also that element of considering the potential for losing one unit on this site to enable a more appropriate form of development to take place. I think that has captured the issues. Chairman, I note that the applicant is raising his hand requesting to speak if you wish to open the session again, but that would be at Councillor Kershaw's request.
I think I'm more than happy to add that to the amendment. I think it's a very sensible suggestion. I mean, I'm loath to lose another affordable house, but I think it is a pinched site, and I'm happy for the applicant to speak if he feels the need. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Just to come to the front again, microphone would help.
Thank you.
If you could just answer that issue.
Yes, in terms of numbers of dwellings, the fact that we've gone to bungalows to reduce overlooking and provide for the future adaptability of properties, it has led to a larger footprint, and I think the viability could cope with loss of one of those properties, so we can certainly do that. I just wanted to make you aware that Broadland Housing Association as applicant is in an option agreement with the landowner, and that has the ability to be extended until a resolution to grant or refusal. But there is a long stop date, so there will come a time where if Anglian Water hasn't delivered on its commitment, that the option agreement falls away, and £50,000 worth of effectively public money is lost from the planning application process. Thank you.
Thank you. I think we understand the position clearly now. So we have now this slightly hybrid proposal to defer pending the drainage issues and a revision of the site layout. Could we have a roll call vote, please?
Thank you, Chair. I'll read out your names and could you answer for, against or abstain, please? Firstly, Councillor Brown.
For.
Councillor Fisher.
For.
Councillor Fitch-Tillett. For. Councillor Heinrich.
For.
Councillor Holliday.
For.
Councillor Kershaw.
For.
Councillor Lloyd.
For.
Councillor Mancini Boyle.
For.
Councillor Pearce.
For.
Councillor Toy.
For.
And Councillor Withington. For. And Councillor Yassimi.
For.
That's unanimous.
Thank you. Okay, we move on to agenda item 8. Blakeney PF/21/0692. Erection of 1.5 storey detached dwelling, park retrospective, 8 Langham Road, Blakeney. Let's see who is presenting this one. Is it you, Colin?
It is, Chair, yes.
Right. Thank you. Off you go then, please.
Thank you very much, Chair. Good morning, everyone. This is item 8 on the agenda, which is application reference PF 21/0692, presented on behalf of Officer Liz Starling. The application proposes the erection of a 1.5 storey detached dwelling, part retrospective at 8 Langham Road, Blakeney. The officer report can be found on pages 39 to 43 of the report pack, along with appendices on pages 45 to 46 and accompanying slides. The site lies within the development boundary for Blakeney, which is designated as a coastal service village in an area designated as residential, where the principle of a new dwelling is accepted under policies SS1 and SS3, subject to schemes satisfying a range of other policy criteria. The site does benefit from extant planning permission for a dwelling to be constructed under PF 17/0581, with works now substantially complete on the site. Members will note from the report that there has been a history of applications on the site in an attempt to amend and regularise works that have been carried out since the initial 2017 decision, owing to the inclusion of roof space accommodation. The most recent of these was application PF 20/0564, which sought the erection of a 3-bedroom dwelling of similar design, but which included first floor windows and roof lights to allow for 2 first floor bedrooms and a bathroom, along with changes to boundary treatments and the installation of entrance gates and pillars. That application was refused on the grounds of poor living conditions at first floor level for future occupiers, owing to the small size of the proposed first floor windows and roof lights. That application was the subject of a recent appeal, with the inspector dismissing the appeal and agreeing with the local planning authority that the living conditions for one of the proposed first floor bedrooms would be unacceptable, owing to minimal outlook and minimal light levels. However, importantly, the inspector considered that the other first floor bedroom, which benefits from a large gable end window and which is proposed under the application now before you, was acceptable with no concerns regarding overlooking and providing acceptable living conditions. This being the case, the current application merely seeks to propose a detached 1.5-storey, 2-bedroom dwelling of a very similar design to that originally granted in 2017, but now with just one first floor bedroom and bathroom in the same configuration as found to be acceptable by the planning inspector, thus omitting the other first floor bedroom that was found to be unacceptable. That is now shown as a storage space. The appeal decision must be afforded significant weight in regards to the recommendation on this current application. As a result, the proposed living arrangements and impacts regarding amenity are considered to be acceptable. It is recognised that concerns have been raised regarding the visual impact of the proposed development, particularly in terms of the boundary treatment installed, including the entrance gate and pillars. However, this was deemed to be acceptable under the last application, and this remains the view under the current application. Given the built-up context of the area surrounding the site, it is not considered that the proposed development would have a detrimental impact upon the special qualities of the AONB or character of the surrounding area. Again, given the site context, it's not considered reasonable to restrict external lighting, particularly given that no such restrictions were placed upon the original 2017 permission. No objections have been raised by the Highway Authority in regards to the access arrangements, nor have they raised any such objections to previously submitted applications. So overall, to conclude, the officer recommendation is one of conditional approval as summarised on page 43 of the report. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Officer Wright, anything to add before the public speakers?
Nothing further to add, Chairman.
Thank you. Okay, we have 2 speakers, Town and Parish Council, Rosemary 2, Chairman. Familiar with this?
Thank you, Chairman. Blakeney Parish Council objects to this application. Committee members have been advised of the planning history and the applicant's repeated requests for erection of a 1.5-storey detached dwelling. Approval was given to the erection of a single-storey building. The erection, nonetheless, of a 1.5-storey house, now seeking part retrospective approval, shows disregard for the planning process. As you have heard, the site is inside the development area of Blakeney and within an area of outstanding natural beauty. The criterion of building in the area is that it should enhance the area. This property does not. A particular concern for the Parish Council is the property gates. A photograph has been sent to the committee secretary and I understand has been circulated to committee members. They are completely out of keeping with the location of the property. Although the address is given as 8 Langham Road, the property is actually located in Queen's Close, which is an estate of ex and current local authority homes. The gates are high and pillared. They are out of sympathy with the local style and materials and have attracted criticism from local residents. The house is floodlit and illuminated at night. I note the officer's comment in this regard, but Blakeney has adopted a dark skies policy and the lighting is intrusive, running counter to that policy. So Blakeney Parish Council's objection can be summarised as the demonstrated lack of regard to planning requirements, the construction of a property which does not enhance the area, the gates and pillars which are out of keeping, and lighting which breaches our dark skies policy. I encourage the committee to resist this request. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. We have no objecting speaker, 1 supporting speaker, Mr. Stephen Howes, House Design.
Good morning, everyone. My name's Stephen Howes and I'm the agent dealing with this application. I just want to sort of clarify that the the body of the house is as that of the approved application previously. So the building hasn't got any taller or any bigger in footprint than originally approved. I do appreciate there has been an extra level of accommodation in the first floor of the building. This adds one obscured glazed window to the first floor, which faces west, and one unobscured glazed window facing south over the car park to the surgery. There is also another obscure glazed window to the ground floor of the property, serving an ensuite. There has been the lighting issue. I have spoken to the applicant, and they are willing to look into changing lighting to appease any issues with the lighting. So if that is an issue, then I can speak to the planning officer, and we can deal with that prior to any decision being made. But as the officer has mentioned, this has been supported by the planning inspector for this one bedroom, and that's what we're looking to seek today. So I'd just like your support on this, please. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. I'm bringing this case before you because although there are planning reasons why this should be approved, it is felt this dwelling looks inappropriate in the streetscape. The chief concerns are the first floor windows and scale and the boundary treatment, and I welcome your views on both. Permission was granted in 17 for a single-storey bungalow, and permitted development rights for additional windows was removed to comply with concerns regarding the provision of first floor accommodation. Whilst under construction, it was noted that works were not being carried out in accordance with the approved plans. And I remember Karen Ward telling me about this as an example of good enforcement teamwork when the unapproved windows went in. The boundary treatment. The hedge running along the back of the surgery car park was replaced by a brick wall and gate. And I don't know if you've seen the photos of the gate, actually, have you? I didn't seem to get them anyway. Good. And which was introduced in the refused 20 application. This makes the car park and entrance seem much more urban and is out of character for a village setting. In addition, the biodiversity implications of losing a hedge do not seem to have been taken into account. The parish council feel the gate is out of keeping with the area. I agree, the location map makes Blakeney look much more built up than it is in fact, which is why garden infill such as this is thought to be unpopular. So in summary, you can argue that this proposal is contrary to EN 1, 2, 4 and 9, although the planners think otherwise. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Before we move into debate, could I ask either Sir River Officer Rose and just to comment on whether we could condition the lighting and whether there is anything that could be done regarding the gates? Thank you.
Chairman, the issue of lighting is an issue which we've spoken about at this development committee on a number of occasions. I need to remind members today that the Blakeney neighbourhood plan that was referred to is at the pre-submission stage. And I've noted at that pre-submission stage that officers of this council, which the working party members will be aware of, recommended amendments and further evidence be added specifically on that matter of dark skies. So members, please refer to your local plan policy. The neighbourhood plan policy is at pre-submission stage, and I regret carries limited weight at this stage. I expect that lighting policy will reflect the officers' comments and recommendations of the working party. With regard to the use of conditions, certainly there are opportunities to consider the implementation of conditions. You've heard from the applicant's agent today that they will be abiding by those conditions. It is critical that those conditions effectively deal with the concerns of the parish council for you to support the application on that matter today. Unfortunately, we don't have those details in front of us, and we also have an extensive planning history to this site where an appeal inspector has sat and imposed previous conditions. That may make the imposition of conditions difficult if the applicant later reneges or considers that they should appeal against those conditions. However, you've heard the goodwill expressed today by the applicant's agent. My expectation is that the applicant in this case will adhere to carefully crafted conditions and schemes to engineer limited light shed. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. Okay, we move to debate. What do you wish to? John first.
Go on, John. You go.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, it's difficult. Obviously, we like to consider local opinion, but you know, even if we can't visit nowadays, as I've got here, we can look on Street View and get a feel for it. And looking at the streetscape that's been described to us, and having seen the pictures of the building and what's going on and what the inspector said, I don't see any issues with this and think that the officer's recommendation is correct. I would like us to negotiate, as has been offered over the lighting. I think that would be reasonable. I don't know if someone could confirm to me. I believe the gates are already approved on a previous application. I think I understood that correctly. In which case, we have to respect planning that is already approved, as was, as Officer Rubin in his report to us said that, stuff was already done in 2017. It's already stuff that's been decided. We can't roll that back now. And we actually have the inspector's report that suggests that upstairs is acceptable. And I don't, and the size of the building's not changed. Yes, it's disappointing that they've gone through the processes that they have. And we should acknowledge that. And I think that the conditioning that storage space doesn't become a room, we should find a way to do that as well, to make sure that there's not a creep again. But we are where we are. And I see in the written reports from the parish council about, getting enforcement to remove it. We're talking about a couple of windows there to enable an extra room, to make it a better proposition for future people to live there, which is what the inspector said. So actually, so apart from the couple of items I mentioned there, the lighting and the gates, I'm prepared to propose that we accept the officer's recommendation.
Confirm you're proposing that. Could I just ask Officer Rubin, with regard to these gates, are they in your view in accordance with the original planning permission?
From what I can see on, from what I can see on the 2017 permission, the gates and the pillars weren't part of the 2017 permission, and they've come in since then.
So would they normally require planning permission?
If they're over 1 metre high, then yes, they would, yes.
So they are a technical breach of the planning permission. Be clear on that one.
Yeah, in which case then I think we need to take appropriate action about that if they need it, because they've not been applied for retrospectively. Again, as I understand it, that's not in this application. Therefore, there needs to be either a retrospective or need to be removed for that. Thank you. Officer Rouse could probably answer that. I don't know. Is that
I'd defer to the presenting officer.
Thank you.
Okay, so clearly that is an issue that needs to be resolved, but separately from the application before us.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
I'm sure officers will follow up on that and deal with it appropriately. Councillor Pitts.
Mr. Chairman, to me, it's a situation of an applicant doing what the hell they want and negating the planning process, whether it's good or bad and needs changing. I'm not getting involved in a political argument. But I look at the history of this site, refused. And we've now got another issue with the gates. To be quite honest, and I'll say it bluntly, I don't trust the applicant. I think that the law is the law. We have a burgeoning situation within our officers for works that need to be rectified or relieved. We only saw that in report the other week. I think it's 350 now, isn't it? Whatever. Maybe I'm wrong, but the point is we've got a lot of situations where people are under mock of planning laws. It is not our job to change things politically. It is our job to do as the law and the acts provide. I can't accept that we've got to put this forward. I think it's either rectification or it comes down. I don't like respective applications at all. Officer Rowson and other members here know my situation on retrospective applications. It makes a mockery of North Norfolk District Council, makes a mockery of the planning situation, and I think it's leading us down the road where everybody do what the hell they want. So sorry, I do not find in favour of the proposition.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Yassini.
I've listened to what all the councillors have said, and of course of what Nigel has said just now. But to put things in balance, we did hear with our own ears today that the agent is willing to rectify these things to a satisfactory standard, did we not?
But as I heard it, that we have nothing in writing.
Put things in
fact,
balance.
we merely have
Sorry.
comment in public meeting. Yeah, be careful with your words, please.
Yes.
Councillor Kershaw.
Thank you, Chair. I have looked at the photographs. I've also looked at this Google Streets scenes. I don't find this to be objectionable. I think that I thank the officers for their report. I'm mindful of the fact that it has gone before the planning inspectorate, and whilst I am concerned about retrospectives, I am prepared to second this. But with the condition that we look at the lighting and the gates are looked at. Thank you.
Chairman, to assist the presenting officer and members this morning, I'm looking at the submitted plans, PL03 revision C, that Mr. Howes will recall submitting to the council. On the plans as submitted, I have gates shown set back from the highway. I don't appear to have any elevational details. What you could do today, members, is you could introduce either a condition which requires those gates to be deleted from this application, or members, you could ask for further details to be submitted and discharged via a condition. I need to correct where we stand today. The submitted plan does show a fence line and swinging open gates on the drive. However, Mr. Howes has not shown details of those in an elevation. It may be, members, that when we investigate this, those gates are set back from the highway and they may be permitted development. We can obviously report on that directly to the concerned local member and the parish council. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Officer Rowson. Do we need to include that as in the recommendation?
Chairman, the recommendation can be amended to require details of entrance gates. If members feel that those gates, as shown in the details submitted and the concerns raised by the speakers today, should be omitted from these proposals, then you can effectively omit them by the use of a planning condition under any further permission. However, Chairman, I note that they are on the plan, and I also note that they are set back from the highway. This may allow, under permitted development, the enclosure and erection of gates. That's a matter of Article 4 that Councillor Holliday and I have discussed at some time, and we will review those issues across the conservation areas in the Glaven Valley. However, today we need to make a decision on this submission for Mr. Howes' clients. So I would suggest to members that we may consider that the gates be submitted in detail via a condition. If you feel otherwise, members, you could amend the motion and you could ask for a condition which deletes those gates from the application. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Officer Rowson. Councillor Toy, do you wish to?
Yep, no, I'm happy that we at this stage, I think I would propose that, provided, as Officer Rowson said, he would go to the local member and the parish council with that information, that the professionals will know what's allowed as permitted development and what is right and correct, and that they can deal with that at this time. But it must be in the conditions of what we vote for today, that action happens. Thank you.
Let me just go back to Officer Ryerson first. The final word of conditions we delegated to the Assistant Director of Planning is part of the recommendation. So can you take that on board without?
We will take that on board, Chairman, Councillor Toy, through our consideration, and we will speak carefully with Mr. Howe on behalf of his clients and look at those issues relating to the gates and keep the local ward member and parish council informed as we progress.
Are you happy with that, Councillor Semi? Councillor Fitch-Tillett.
Thank you. Is it just the gates or does that also include the wall?
They're integral, Chairman. You can't hang a gate unless you've got a sky hook.
No,
And in
but,
35 years of planning, I
I'm
haven't
just-
seen one of those yet, Chairman.
I'm just being picky here because I'm hearing the local member and I do have certain sympathy in so much as if you look at the street scene way back, there's nice greenery and hedges and suddenly you've got this wall on which to hang the gates. Are we also suggesting that we don't like the wall as well?
Chairman, it would be a matter of what the extent of planning control is in this matter. It may be that otherwise the applicant may be in a position that the wall and gates are set back considerably from the highway, and when measured by investigating officers, they may not need permission. What I need to do, members, is to ensure that you're accurately briefed today. If you consider that those gates and piers as part of this application are not acceptable, then you can consider them under an application and you can actually delete them from the proposals. However, Chairman, there are strong permitted development allowances and we need to consider those. So my recommendation today, Chairman, is that officers be delegated to consider the matters of detail for the gates and the piers upon which they are hung. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. That's some clarification. If there is no further debate, then we'll move to a vote. The recommendation is to approve, subject conditions, cover the matters listed below, and with the final wording, conditions delegated to the Assistant Director of Planning, which, as we have discussed, will include the issues surrounding gates and walls. On that basis, are you happy as proposer? Second, thank you. We move to the vote then, please, Linda.
Thank you, Chair. Again, I'll read your names in alphabetical order. Councillor Brown.
For.
Councillor Fisher.
For.
Councillor Fitch-Tillett.
For.
Councillor Heinrich.
For.
Councillor Holliday.
Abstain.
Councillor Kershaw.
For.
Councillor Lloyd.
For.
Councillor Mancini Boyle.
For.
Councillor Pearce.
Against.
Councillor Toy.
For.
Councillor Withington.
For.
And Councillor Yassimi.
For.
So that's 10 in favour, 1 against and 1 abstention. That's carried.
Did everybody hear what I just said? Possibly not. Okay, so apart from Bruno. Officer Regular Costa, please proceed. Please proceed, Bruno.
Thank you, Chair. Good morning, councillors. So I'm going to present, I'm just going to share my screen. So the application reference today is for PF/21/0567. So it's for the Sea House in Temple Drive, Weybourne. So the proposal is for the extension of the side and rear and also replacement roof. We raise ridge height and external alterations. So the application is on page 65 of the agenda. So the site is here marked in red. So it's north of the A149 Shangham Road. It lies on the coastal southeast village of Weybourne. It is also located in a residential area and area of stunning natural beauty, and is within the Sheringham Park. So the site is here marked red, again, north of the A149 Sheringham Park. In yellow, we have Temple Drive and Temple Close here in blue. In light green, we have Weybourne Holiday Park, and in dark green, we have Weybourne Town Pit, which is a site of special scientific interest. This site of special scientific interest lies 30 meters away from the dwelling. So concerns are being raised by Weybourne Parish Council in relation to the impact that the proposal will have on this site. So given the distance of the proposal to the site, and also what is proposed in terms of glazing that is mainly on the ground floor, it is unlikely that this will give rise to concerns. So this is the existing proposed block plans. So to the left, we have existing block plan, and to the right, we have the proposed block plan with in gray, light gray are the proposals. So here you see on the left-hand side, it's the existing and proposing elevations. So highlighted in red is what is proposed. Then you can see then on the right that this is the proposal. So existing on the left-hand side and proposed on the right-hand side. So apologies. So this is the main elevation. So main elevation, existing main elevation and proposed main elevation. And these are the rear elevations facing east. So on the left is the existing east elevation to the rear. Within red is highlighted what is proposed. Then you have the proposed on the right-hand side, mainly the level glazing is ground floor. And then here you have level glazing on the attic space, which is for bedroom 1, which facing east. This is a south elevation, so side elevation. So again, on the top, you can see the existing dwelling with the differences in the ridge height. So there's an increase in the ridge on the west elevation facing the road of 1.3 meters. And then on the right-hand side, you see there's an increase of 0.85 meters on the ridge height. So overall, you can see in red as well what is proposed, which you can see down here. That's the proposed elevation. Concerns have been raised by Norfolk Gulf Partnership and also Weybourne Parish Council in relation to lights spilled. So what has been done is this has been discussed with the agent, and here on this south elevation, you can see there's 2 roof lights. Before there was 6, so there was a reduction in the roof lights to reduce light spill impact. Landscape officer accepted this change, and there's not having any issues in relation to this alteration to the design. This is the north elevation. So existing again at the top and proposed in the bottom. So there's no amenity issues with this proposal. There's a separation distance from the dwelling on both sides, neighboring properties, and also there's timber fences, so there's no amenity issues on the proposal. This is the existing site plan on the left and proposed site plan on the right. So the existing dwelling has a footprint of 154 square meters, and the proposed footprint of the extension is 54 square meters. So the site has 1,221 square meters. So it's quite a generous site with generous, modest additions, mainly in the ground floor. You can see in the next slide. One thing as well is some concerns have been raised in relation to parking, that there was not enough parking on the sites. So here you can see there is parking for 3 cars. The proposal comprises of an increase from a 4-bedroom house to a 5-bedroom house, and an increase from a 2-bedroom, an increase from a 2-bathroom to 4 bathrooms. So in terms of bedrooms, it complies, the minimum parking standards according to core strategy requires that 4 to 5-bedroom houses need to have a minimum of 3 parking spaces. So it complies with policy in this respect. Here is the existing and proposed ground floor plan. So to the left is the existing ground floor plan, and highlighted in red are the proposed extensions. So this equals to 54 square meters. And here you can see the overall length of 8.2 meters, width of 8.2 meters and length of 21.1 meters, and separation distance to the boundaries. So here is existing and proposed first floor plans. So to the left is the existing first floor, and to the right proposed first floor. So mainly the bedrooms are located on the attic roof, which that's one of the reasons why the ridge height is being increased to accommodate this level of accommodation, with 3 bathrooms and 3 bedrooms. And here you can also see serving bedroom 1. You have the 2 roof lights that previously were 6 and now there's just 2. And then you have the level of glazing here facing east, the site of special scientific interests, and also the rear garden. So this is a modest level of glazing here. So it has a width of 3.5 meters by height of 3 meters. So these are visualizations from the west elevation. So this is the main elevation out to the front, so 45-degree angle perspective here. So this is the left, the right, you have a south elevation side, another angle from the top. So there's here the extension here in the south, there's that infill there as well, left hand side, and then here this extension here on the right hand side to the back, to the rear. Again, here on the left hand side you can see ground floor level glazing and the extension there at the back in white, and this proposed window here that says bedroom 1. Then to the right hand side you have north elevation facing neighboring property. So these are Temple Drive photos, just to have a general overview of the site. So this is photo number 1, so located here at the entrance of Temple Drive, which is here on the right, you access from the right. Image number 2, you can see in the center here, it's the property with cladding on the first floor, dark cladding. On the right hand side, see a glimpse of the neighboring property located south, and on the left hand side here at the top you see the neighboring property located north, and 2 pine trees here. So there is concerns in relation to protecting these trees. Tree protection plan and measures for ground protection have been provided. Landscape officer accepts those and subject to condition those on the decision. And preliminary risk assessment as well have been provided, given some concerns in relation to protected species. The measures, so there was no issues with protected species, and condition will secure enhancement measures for this site. So neighboring property to the south, neighboring property to the north. This is another photo facing west. In this case, is in front of the dwelling. This is holiday, so basically Weybourne Hull Park holiday setting. This is a property number 6 at the top, has 2 floors, attic space. So this property is located north of the site, which is here, the left-hand side marked in reds. Some images of the existing dwelling. So this is the front elevation as it currently stands. On the right-hand side is a rear elevation as it currently stands. Rear elevation again on the left-hand side. North elevation on the right-hand side. This is facing west through Weybourne Hull Park. This is on the right-hand side is facing east to the rear of the garden and to the site of special scientific interest. And on the left-hand side is property to the north, and on the right-hand side is property to, you can see property to the south. So in relation to the key issues in this proposal is in relation to the design and also landscape impact of the proposal. Other matters have been raised in relation to overbearing, out of scale. So given, as I previously mentioned, the proposal is modest, it's just for addition of 54 square meters. They're mainly ground floor extensions. There's only an increase in the ridge height to accommodate living space above. And there's glazing as well on the east and south elevations, as well as on the first floor to provide natural light to the internal spaces of the property and provide quality of life as well for their occupants. In relation to dark skies, as I said before, the reduction of roof lights has been implemented, and also in relation to landscape issues, preliminary risk assessment and tree reduction plan, and also ground protection measures have been provided, which will be secured through condition. In relation to levels of lighting, these will be secure again through condition. So any lighting that will be added to the proposal needs to have a prior to their first use, need to have a condition to protect the surrounding site from any external lighting. So overall, the recommendation is for approval, subject to the standards conditions of time limits, materials and approved plans, as well as measures for tree protection and ground protection, and enhancement measures and mitigation measures in terms of protected species. And lastly, the prior agreement for any external lighting. That's the end of my presentation. Thank you very much. Sorry, apologies, I couldn't hear.
Well, that's.
Bruno, hopefully you saw that message in the chat there. We just had microphone issues, so we decided to break early. Sorry, just muted at the moment.
Can you hear me?
Yep.
Sorry. Yes, carry on.
Okay, yeah, we're so what time did we say we'd be back?
So it's 15 minutes. Not sure. I think
Yeah,
only
I think in about 10 minutes time. If you just keep an eye on your screen, we'll let you know when we're back, okay?
that's fine. Just one thing. I'm not sure if I could see that there was a message on the right-hand side, but I haven't seen the message at the time I was in the presentation, so I don't know until what point councillors heard my presentation.
Yes, they can. Yeah.
They did hear my presentation.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, fantastic. Thank you.
Cheers. See you shortly.
Thank you.
Okay, colleagues, I think we're all present and correct again. So we will proceed with PF 210567. Before I go to speakers, do you have anything to add to the report, Sir Alison?
Nothing, Chairman. You've had a very thorough presentation from the case officer, so nothing more to add from me. Let's move on, Chairman.
Thank you. Okay, we'll move to, first of all, to parish speakers. Mr. Todd. Sit there, please. 3 minutes available to you.
Hello. Good morning, Mr. Chairman, committee members. Having received representation from several residents and having discussed the application at length in council, Weybourne Parish Council strenuously objects to this application based on a number of material concerns. Firstly, density. The existing developments in the drive are modest in nature and the proposed development is not. It would be overbearing. An increase in height of 1.3 metres and an increase in the footprint of over 30% cannot be considered modest and would dwarf the existing properties, unbalancing the feel of the street. We would hope that a proposal more matching the existing height and footprint could be considered. We have major concerns about nature and conservation. There will be substantial light seepage from the roof lights, the upper story glazed areas and the ground floor in an area that is both an SSI and a dark sky area. To claim that the light will be shielded by the existing trees and boundary is facile. We've already seen substantial clearance of hedges. The light will be leaking into the environment and there's no guarantee that the trees and boundary will remain in place in perpetuity. Further, parking. Whilst 3 spaces may be the minimum under the policy, this is never enough. Temple Drive already has major parking issues due to the holiday chalets. We would ask that if this application is approved, a condition is placed that no vehicles could be parked on the close itself and should be within the boundary. The village encourages development and welcomes new families with open arms, but the character of the surroundings and the views of the residents must be considered so as not to cause dissent within the community. Weybourne Parish Council respectfully requests that this application in its current format be rejected. Thank you.
Thank you. We have no other objecting speaker, one supporting speaker, Mr. Howes again.
Right. Good morning again. The development here is basically to try and improve and update a sort of tired looking property. It's had multiple extensions to it over the years, which are not really befitting of a property of this age. And my client would like to not only improve the appearance of it, but also improve the sustainability of the property by increasing the insulation and just making it a much more thermally efficient property. I don't believe that it's overdevelopment, like the case officer said. It is modest in its increase in footprint and modest in its increase in height. We haven't made a 1.5 story property a full 2 story. It is only going up by I think it's 0.8 of a metre on the highest part. And I've been respectful over the neighbouring properties in that we haven't got any side facing windows. We've got high level roof lights, which negate the need for dormers or anything that would actually look onto the sides of the property, because the gable faces the front of the street. The sides are actually the slopes of the roofs, which then also, because of the Temple Drive actually rising up to the north of the property, the adjacent property to the north is actually is higher in the topography of the land. So in effect, you wouldn't be taking away any more light from that property because there's already a substantial hedge running along that side. So it's not going to overshadow or overbear on that property. The landscapers officer's happy with the scheme now following the removal of some of the roof lights, and it was never the intention to increase the amount of glazing to harm the dark skies initiative. But that has to be sort of seen on balance with you need windows to mitigate the need for artificial lighting and also for solar gain so that you don't actually need to heat the property fully through other means. The parking issue, there is 3 cars shown on the plan, and if I show more cars on plans I get criticised that there's going to be more traffic. So I could have shown 5 cars in the car parking spaces, but we need to show 3, that's the requirement, and you would be able to park more cars in there. Being a private road, you could reverse out onto Temple Drive. So basically, I think this is sustainable development. It's modest in its scale, and I'd like for you to seek to approve this. Thank you.
Thank you. Spot on time. Okay, move to the local member. I think it's holiday again.
Right, it's a duo today. Again, I'm bringing this case to you because even though there are planning reasons why it should be approved, it is felt this dwelling looks inappropriate in and has a negative impact on the landscape. The chief concerns are the scale and glazing, and I would welcome your views on both. The neighbouring dwellings are very modest in size, and the proposed footprint and ridge height increases will be out of character with neighbouring dwellings. Because the plot is twice the size of its neighbours, in theory this increase is absorbed, but from the road it will appear out of scale. And the parish council is objecting on the grounds of overdevelopment. As far as the dark skies are concerned, there is a marked increase in glazing, especially on the south and east elevations. The south elevation has floor to ceiling glazing on the ground. Okay, it is on the ground floor, but it has quite considerable glazing. The east elevation, of which the ground floor is largely glazing, overlooks the Marl Pit, which is the triple SI, and then open countryside. I counted quite a few roof lights. I know there are more, we've taken some out, but obviously that has an impact. And cumulatively, this has the potential through light pollution to negatively impact the tranquility and wildness of the AONB, especially important given its proximity to the Kellingheath Dark Skies discovery site. So again, I think you can argue this is contrary to policies HO9, EN1, 4 and paragraph 125 of MPPF, though the planners have a different view. Thank you.
Thank you. I did note on some of the photographs a little bit concerned that a certain amount of groundworks and materials deliveries have already taken place in advance of this application being considered. Given our propensity to get retrospectives is a little bit concerning. However, members, who wishes to start? Councillor Mancini-Bullock.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yes, I was quite concerned about that. Seeing a slab of concrete in a planning application was quite concerning. However, if you look at on your pictures, number 6 is quite a large building on page 93, and to me it looks like a 3-story building with dormer windows at the top. So, you know, looking at this application, it's increased by 54 square meters. I actually don't think there's much of a problem with it, although it does concern me that work's already started before the permission's been granted. Thank you.
Are you proposing acceptance of the recommendation?
Yes, I'll propose.
Thank you. Sorry, Mr. Howes, you've had your chance to speak. Unless we need clarification. Okay, well, could you just clarify that? Okay, we'll take that as you say. Councillor Kershaw.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I personally don't see this particularly controversial. Looking at the other buildings on Temple Drive, I think the proposed modifications, removing some of the what looks like 70s brickwork and increasing its insulation, I think the revised plans show a neater and more acceptable building that was previously there. And there's no there's no generic scheme on Temple Drive. They're all different houses of different scales, single, double and large. So I'd thank the officer for a very thorough report, and I'm happy to second this.
Thank you, Councillor Kershaw. Councillor Lloyd.
Actually, I was going to second this myself. So for the very same reasons that Councillor Kershaw has said, I really don't think this is out of character looking at the other photographs along this road. The roof lights are very small. It's well shielded all around, 2-metre fences in some aspects. So I'm happy to approve this.
You into the list. Councillor Willington.
I'm in support of this as well, and I think this actually improves the area in that this is what I would describe in really classic planning terms as a higgledy-piggledy house as it is at the moment. And I think this brings a sense of true design to this building. So I think it will improve that road. And I think there are a very eclectic mix of houses, so you're just adding to that eclection. So yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Pearce.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I believe that it was right to bring it forward today. Not only because of the policy, I hate violations now, but policy differences. The fact that it's close to the mile pit, which is a special specific interest, needed looking at. I did have concerns because it is a very large growth on the existing building, notwithstanding the fact that the buildings in the area and the road are substantial themselves. But when you change the character of a small building to make it larger and then larger again because of the growth, it did concern me. But I think listening to my learned member colleagues, that I would not vote against it at this stage, because I can see it being tastefully done, although it is extensive. And I just hope that the applicant, when it comes to it, doesn't undertake to, receive difficulties that we haven't looked at, because it's a very thorough report. It's a very thorough scanning, and it's the kind that we need when you're dealing with an area of such as this. So I just thought it was worth saying that. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Fish-Tillett.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Obviously, as this council's representative on the Norfolk Coast Partnership, my first concerns is impact on the AONB. However, looking at the landscape impact report on page 68, I am content and happy to support this.
Thank you. Councillor Toy.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. What was pleasing to hear there, some notes that I'd made, and the agent there saying insulation, but also mentioning the windows and solar gain, passive features in the house, which are important. There were items I wanted to raise that they were in the south, and they are effective in house heating and often used in zero carbon housing. The only thing, I don't know if it's appropriate for us to consider whether we need to go for a condition or whatever. There is an increase in the number of bathrooms with the number of bedrooms, and water usage. Water is becoming a precious commodity, and whether it just needs to have the right adaptations in the plumbing to make sure that water usage is kept down. I'm not proposing that we remove any bathrooms, but that where we say people should have, down lighting or whatever, that I think we should have in this case, because they've given it some thought, that there actually is some consideration given to water usage and the restrictions of its use. Hopefully that made some sense. Sort of rambled a bit there, Mr. Chairman, but thank you.
Thank you. Before we move to the, see anybody else? Before we move to the vote, any final comments from you, Bruno, or? Okay, we have a proposer and a seconder. So, Linda, usual.
Thank you, Chair. I'll read your names in alphabetical order again. Councillor Brown.
4.
Councillor Fisher.
4.
Councillor Fitch-Tillett,
For.
Councillor Heinrich,
For.
Councillor Holiday,
Abstain.
Councillor Kershaw,
For.
Councillor Lloyd,
For.
Councillor Mancini Boyle,
For.
Councillor Pearce,
For.
Councillor Toy,
For.
Councillor Withington,
For.
and Councillor Yassimi.
For.
That's 11 in favour with 1 abstention. That's carried.
Thank you. The recommendation is therefore approved, subject to the conditions set out. Thank you. Right. Let's move on. Find my way through this. The paper. Okay, we move now to Ingham. Application PF/21/0797 for a new 2-storey detached dwelling, driveway and access onto Pauling Road, together with landscaping, etc. So, you're presenting on this one.
Thank you, Chairman. Through you, members of the public, I'm presenting today. Our case officer who prepared this report is Darryl Watson, who is away from the office on leave currently. So I will be your officer presenting today, and I'll also answer as many questions as you have for me. Thank you very much, Chairman. So as the Chairman has introduced, this is a 2-storey detached dwelling with driveway and ancillary accommodation. There is a garage and storage building. And you'll also see, members, in your presentation pack, there are proposals for an access and planting in front of the building with a pond to the rear. Members, I'm not intending to go through the presentation pack. I will assume that unless you tell me otherwise, you've seen that presentation pack and you've been able to form your views and ask any questions you may wish of me as we proceed. I would just simply ask members that I think as we turn to an issue relating to fallback, that I flag for you what is page 16 of my presentation. It may be a different page number in your bundle. It's called Location of Sites. And if I can ask you, members, to pause at this moment just to familiarise yourself with the spot that is the application site, and then also the spot that is the site of the approved conversion PU/20/0577, a permitted development prior notification proposal for the conversion of a barn. You'll see that's referred to in the fallback position. Members, I hope you've been able to find that slide in your pack. Great. Keep that as a bookmark if you wouldn't mind going forward. Also, members, you will find on your desks today that I have circulated for you the comments of the landscape officer. Point of order was raised by the applicants, and quite rightly, they asked for members to be briefed of the current comments from the landscape officer. You have those in front of you. The comments within your written reports pack refer back to previous comments issued by the landscape officer. Chairman, if we could pause for a moment or two and enable members to read those comments if they have not already. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll take a couple of minutes to catch up with those 2 issues. Okay, you ready to proceed, colleagues? Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, members. I appreciate that pause to make sure you're updated on those landscape comments. Turning now to my presentation to you today verbally in this meeting, I think it's important, members, to reflect on the comments on page 56 of the application agendas today. Those relate to the comments from the Parish Council and also from the ward member who you'll hear from shortly. You can see, members, that the parish are concerned about the matter of overdevelopment that they consider is in an open field. They consider that, you'll recall we mentioned the fallback site, they consider that to be 700 metres away from the building it's proposed to replace. You'll also note, members, that there is a concern from the parish that the proposed development is considered by them to be an open countryside and have a detrimental impact on the landscape. And then finally, members, the parish consider that the existing barn is eminently suitable for conversion and that that building sits otherwise in an existing group of buildings, and they find that that would be a more appropriate proposal and would create less landscape impact. Those are the comments of the parish. Thank you, Chairman. Moving on then to comment briefly on the ward members' reasons for calling the case in. You will see the ward member considers that it is positive that the Environment Agency removed their objection on flood risk. Members, you will note that this is in zone 3A of the Environment Agency's flood map. That is one of the most vulnerable areas, the most at-risk areas for flood risk. The member also notes the scheme does conflict with the development plan and that the principle for conversion of the adjacent barn that we've referred back to under fallback is something that is also in conflict with the development plan. I'll just return to that point as I complete. If the permission is granted, the member suggests, if the permission is refused, she suggests that the dwelling that's permitted under the prior notification proposals would almost certainly be built out. I think we accept that, members, as officers. And then finally, suggestions that a Section 106 agreement could be entered into that would enable the extant permission, the permitted development prior notification, to be extinguished, and also that that could be used to secure management and landscaping referred to in the proposals. The member finally concludes that the building is of a similar size to that that's already been approved in the conversion proposals. So, members, moving to the material considerations as I direct you today. First question for me is this development acceptable in principle? You'll see in the officer's report, we do not find that it's acceptable in principle. You have a significant hierarchy issue under policies SS1 and SS2. This is a development in open countryside. It is not supported by those policies. As we've noted earlier, it is contrary to those policies. We believe that those policies are compliant with the MPPF and are also upheld in recent appeal decisions. You may hear otherwise later on, members. Is this site an appropriate location for the development, having regard to the development plan? Again, members, you'll see consideration in the officer's report where officers find that this is a remote site and that it is reliant upon service by the private car. Officers consider that the nature of the local road network is one which discourages walking or cycling. It's considered to be in an unsustainable location by officers, and therefore we find that it is contrary to the provisions of both local plan policy and the MPPF. Members, turning to matters of flood risk, officers note and understand that the Environment Agency have no objection to the proposal. However, members, you will be aware that in matters of flood risk in zone 3A or B, that there is a requirement when we have a planning application for consideration under MPPF and local plan policies, that we must also consider the sequential or exceptions test. In this case, we start with the sequential test, and you will find in your report, members, that officers find that the proposals fail the sequential test for the reasons detailed in that report. I also note, members, that there is an adjacent conversion of a barn under prior notification that could be occupied without the requirement to go through flood risk analysis or indeed the sequential test. The effect of the development on the character and appearance of the area is also another key issue, members. You will see that the landscape officer refers to a previous consultation. You will have read that in your submissions, and you've also read the up-to-date submission from the landscape officer. Officers find that the planting form is considered to fail to fit effectively with the local landscape character. This is an area which is not predominantly populated by copses of trees or landscape planting such as that proposed. We also consider, members, that there will be an issue regarding the immediate short-term and potentially medium-term impact of planting in terms of its amelioration. That planting will take some time to mature, members. So the building that is proposed will have an impact, at least in the short and potentially the medium term. Members, we're also asked to consider the effect on the surrounding road network and whether or not there would be adequate parking provision. I note, members, no objections from the highway officers here, and that the applicants have successfully revised the access from the previous concerns expressed by the highways engineers at the county council. The only concerns that remain, members, are the concerns from the highway engineer about a potentially isolated location set apart from local services and facilities. We've already spoken on that matter. Then, members, I turn finally to the matter of the fallback position. It is a material consideration within our overall planning balance. You will see in the officer's report that the fallback position is considered to offer a permitted development conversion in a location that is part of an existing group of buildings in the landscape. It has not been subject to planning policy consideration in the same way as these proposals. It's subject to different considerations. The proposals in themselves do not require, as a conversion of a building, any substantive elements of planting. So from that point of view, no landscaping is required. So, members, I turn to look then under the fallback position as to the new building. This requires substantial new build. It is not a conversion. You'll recall the statements from ministers recently trying to promote conversions of buildings in terms of sustainability. You will also, members, be aware that we do need substantive new planting here to screen this building. You've heard from me that that screening will not be effective immediately. It cannot be. It needs time to develop and settle in. So, from our point of view as officers, I need to be very clear with you today, members. We have a preference for the conversion of the existing barn in the existing group of buildings that are already a feature in the landscape. We find that the proposals are contrary to policies SS1, SS2, that they failed to meet the sequential flood risk test and policy SS10, and finally that the proposals are considered to have an unacceptable impact on landscape character under policy EN2. Consequently, members, the officer recommendation is for refusal today. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Officer Arson. Very, very clear. We have no parish speakers. I have no objecting speaker, but one supporting speaker, Ms. Abigail Collar. You'd like to come to the front, you'll have 3 minutes.
Good morning, councillors. Thank you for your time in discussing our planning application. We have responded positively and proactively to the concerns raised during the consultation process. I'm delighted that none of the professional consultees had any objection to our application. The landscape officer has not commented on this proposal. We've maintained the character and appearance of the property to other traditional buildings within the village, matching the design of our proposal with the last property developed in Ingham. A similar fallback position was used for that application. This is the nearest appropriate site available due to the lower land between the barn and the proposed site, avoiding flood risk. The Environment Agency have passed the flood risk assessment and have raised no objections. We have no doubt that a development in the countryside in this area will take place, as we have permission already in place. This application has clearly supportive case law. The proposed fallback allows us to achieve a carbon negative development. This would not be possible if we develop the barn. North Norfolk has an objective of tree planting. Our proposal includes a wildlife pond with water-sourced heating system and planting over an acre of woodland, which equates to roughly 1,000 trees. My husband and I have long family connections within the village. And despite us both having good jobs, we find ourselves priced out of the marketplace in this area. My father has donated us the land, and we're looking to build our forever home for our family. Rural villages like Hingham will wither and die without young people and young families. This is a true self-build project offering considerable environmental enhancements over developing a much larger agricultural barn. Case law clearly states that this is an acceptable approach, and I hope that you will support my family as I know you have done so for other people. Thank you for your time and consideration.
Thank you. We now move to local member, Councillor Shires.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, committee members. I'm delighted to actually be able to see you all face to face. It's been quite some time that we've done that. I want to speak in support of this application. There are a number of factors which have already been highlighted, but I would just like to highlight a little bit further when we talk about the isolation of this property. Regardless of whether or not this property is built in the proposed location or under the development of the barn, there is no access to transport, there is no access to local shops, there's no access to local schools. So regardless of where this property is to be built, it would need a car for residents to be able to move around and access local services. I just want to be quite clear about that. And I just want to pick out a line in the officer's report that states that this site is not physically isolated, as the closest dwelling is less than 200 metres away. That feels quite close in terms of Ingham. I want to just speak on the environmental benefits of this proposal. We cannot plant trees without available land, and this proposal gives a significant proportion of land to plant a significant amount of trees on. And I think it would be everybody's wish to be able to aim for carbon negativity in their lifetime. And this application is aiming for that. The objections that were raised in previous iterations, please be aware that this is the third time that this application has been refined in line with objections that have been raised. And each time the applicant has gone away and come back, taking on board those objections to ensure that everybody's opinions is taken into account, those professionals that surround the planning system. Highways have got no objection since alterations have been made. The green infrastructure team, who look after public rights of way, have now got no objections due to changes to this application. The Environment Agency have got no objections. The landscape officer's objections seem to unfortunately not take into account the additional things that have been put in place to mitigate any environmental impact. Dark skies was mentioned previously in the previous iteration.
I believe with the significant planting and other options that have been taken, that this would be mitigated. I just want to finish again by saying that an ambition to become carbon negative and to plant trees, we can't do that without significant parcels of land. The rights on the barn do not allow significant climate mitigation through planting. And unfortunately, due to the landscape, the current site is the only site which is high enough and out of flood risk when you look at the lower land to be able to use a fallback position to build this building. I don't have anything else to add, but I speak in support of this application.
Thank you, Councillor Shires. Do you wish to come back on any points raised, Mr. Ryerson?
Chairman, I think it would be right to respond through debate and any points raised in that wider debate. And thank you, Councillor Shires, for attending today. It's always good to have members attending the Development Committee when the cases are called in.
Could I just ask one question, Mr. Ryerson? We have in the past gone against SS1, SS2 with a property of exceptional architectural merit, as you'll recall. Just to clarify for members, would that position apply in this case or not?
Thank you, Chairman. I think that point is covered in the report, but I'm pleased to highlight it. There is some case law that stands from Braintree, where the issues surrounding what was then paragraph 79, but last week changed to be paragraph 80. Keep an eye on those numbers, members. But the paragraph itself includes a provision for outstanding architecture and innovation. And that proposal actually requires a dwelling to be isolated. So it's a useful opportunity to help clarify that point. The visiting member talked about separation distances of 200 metres. The officer's comment is within that context. It relates to the Braintree case law, where it requires any consideration under paragraph 79, I still think it's E, of that relates to exceptional circumstances, and that would require that the building be isolated. I believe under the Braintree test that this site isn't isolated because the building is within 200 metres. So members, I would suggest to you today that paragraph 79E would not apply in these circumstances. Thank you.
Thank you. Right, I have Councillor Pearce to start.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. One of our core strategies and policies is to protect our area of outstanding natural beauty. I have raised this on applications in the past and will no doubt raise it again. Although maybe, as the applicant said, the landscape officer hasn't given or didn't comment, I draw us to page 57, where it says the landscape guidelines for this type is to conserve the sense of rurality by maintaining the open and rural landscape. The introduction of a large new building in a very open part of the landscape would not conserve the sense of rurality and would therefore not maintain or enhance the landscape character. That flies in the face of our protection of the outstanding natural beauty. I then come to the officer's conclusion and recommendation. It says the proposal is unacceptable in principle and contrary to SS1 and SS2 and would not be a sustainable development. Very little weight can be given to the applicant's suggested fallback position for the reasons stated above as well. And then I look at the three applications for recommendation to refuse on SS1, SS2 of our core strategy, and I'll put A and OB protection in there as well because it's also our heritage. And also the flood risk. I have to ask the question. We've talked about foul water, rainwater this morning in another isolated village. And now we have the environment saying, oh, it's not going to flood now, or we can let it go. And yet when I read in the report, it could flood up to 5 metres. Who's right and who's wrong? Can we afford to make that assumption? Those are the questions I'm asking.
I think I can give you a technical answer through you, Chairman, to that question. The short answer is, Chairman, actually both are right. You know, we are in a situation where we are in a at-risk area. It's zone 3A. I know that the applicants have spent some considerable time working through the engineering concerns that may allow them to build on that site. This is noted. Officers don't object to those issues. We take on board what the Environment Agency say. You'll see in the report there's clarity around those points, but to achieve the opportunity to build at this point, the Environment Agency are requiring that refuge is available at first floor and that a robust, resilient emergency plan is required for people to get off site in the event of a flood. In those circumstances, the Environment Agency are entirely correct to lift their objection. However, Chairman, there is another element to this, a second leg, and that's the leg that I spoke about, the sequential site selection test. And if that is passed, potentially also an exceptions test to be directed as well. So you will see that officers have employed that sequential test. That is the role of the council when the technical engineering tests are overcome. Unfortunately, members, residential use is the most vulnerable type of use that you can find with regard to flood risk. So we have to apply that sequential test very robustly. And we find that on that sequential test, these proposals unfortunately fail. But it is worth noting, Chairman, that technically there is a solution there that the applicants have worked hard to provide. We note that, and that can be given some weight. But you also, members, in policy terms, need to look at the sequential test about selecting a site in a floodplain in the first place. So there we have it.
Thank you. Councillor Toy.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, I get the applicants need to build the house. I understand that, you know, where they've mentioned the financial things, but I'm having trouble balancing the environmental that's been put to us and also the scale. I had a quick look on our old friend Google, and the average house size is 68 square meters, but this is 414. It's quite a large property, which would take some time for trees to grow and to hide it away. The fallback position and the examples given are all about properties being built on the same site, not remote as this site is from the proposed barn conversion. And interestingly, a conversation I started with some of our officers previous to this to deal with another application was about the reuse of buildings and environmental effect. And if I can just, this particular report here, I've just popped up at one of many which I've read. Historic England said the built environment, including construction, accounts for 42% of the UK's carbon footprint. Sorry, I had something that said about the upgrading of and using of old houses. Here we go. It claims that by thoughtfully adapting an old building in the right way, CO2 emissions could be reduced by more than 60%. It's significant. So if the land has been gifted to them and there's true environmental concerns, then we could be doing an appropriate adaptation of the barn and still plant trees potentially and do landscaping on the other side where they're proposing the house. So, you know, I find it difficult to balance that argument with what's in front of us. I'm prepared to listen to the rest of the debate to see if any other members have things to offer, but I'm struggling with that at the moment. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Fitch-Tillett.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I can't condone this. I have huge sympathy with the applicant. Sorry, would start coughing now, wouldn't I? Particularly as they're local people, and I have huge sympathy, but I cannot condone anything in the floodplain. It's as bad as in the coastal erosion zone. And I cannot condone any change to the area of outstanding natural beauty, and I am quite happy, I'm afraid, to propose that we go with the officer's recommendation to refuse.
Andreas.
I've been thinking about this a lot, and I've listened very carefully to what everybody said. And in the past, we have passed things on architectural beauty, haven't we? But the environmental aspect of this application, and I must remind everybody, we must take each application on its own individual merit, outweighs to me tenfold of, we mustn't compare other applications, I know that, but I've just done so. But this outweighs tenfold of what's on offer here. 1,000 trees is a lot of trees, isn't it? And what's on offer here, I feel that the benefits on offer far outweigh the refusal. I'm speaking how I feel. Why has it gone quiet? All right, so yes.
You're getting very passionate.
Yes, but you know, I speak from the heart, and I think this is a good thing. This is a good thing. That's it. I've got nothing else to say.
Thank you. Just before we move to the next speaker, Councillor Hedgerow, you were proposing acceptance of the officer recommendation.
Very confused.
Thank you. Who's next? Councillor Kershaw.
Thank you, Chair. For me, this is building in the countryside, and the offer of 1,000 trees is welcome. It states it's going to be carbon negative, but I don't see how that's arrived at within the descriptions. For me, the rebuilding of an existing barn or buildings could also be carbon negative if done properly. And the use of materials, that obviously there'd be far fewer materials used in a reconstruction than a new build of a very large house. The sustainability issue is weighted equally between the two sides. But for me, I would have to second the officer's recommendation. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Brown.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. There is a fairly simple issue at stake here. We've got planning policies which don't support the application because the property is situated, or proposed property is situated in an unsustainable location, contrary to SS1 and SS2, which it concerns me as the chair of the planning policy. We do seek to impose planning policies rigorously. We have a fallback position, which in itself is only given modest or insignificant weight in the planning balance. Unfortunately, the applicant's personal circumstances are not a material consideration in planning. Having said that, we are supportive of our communities, encouraging new buildings to sustain communities wherever we possibly can. But I think this can be achieved by the conversion of the existing barn as a fallback position. Given that we have a flood risk and the sequential test is failed, given that we have a deleterious effect on the character of the neighbourhood, because this is in a semi-remote location, unfortunately, I don't think I can support the application, and therefore I will be voting to accept the officer's recommendation for refusal.
Thank you, Councillor Brown. Councillor Lloyd.
Thank you, Chair. Well, a lot of what I was going to say has been said. I think building in the countryside, SS1 and SS2 are, as a council, one of our primary duties to protect the countryside. Building in a floodplain, with the mitigation being moving upstairs to the first floor, to me, that's not a sustainable position to be in. The 1,000 trees, of course, we'd like to see trees. It's part of our corporate plan to plant trees, but surely those trees can be planted in on that land anyway if there are if the applicant so wishes. It's within their gift to do that. The carbon footprint of new housing, I mean, there's not a great deal of information about the type of construction available here this morning, but as I think Councillor Toy said earlier, traditional builds are very high carbon, in fact, one of the highest contributors to carbon emissions. So all in all, I'm thinking I'm going to have to go with the officers on this one, but with a heavy heart.
Okay, I note the applicant has raised a hand. However, your public speaking time has finished. If you wish to correct something that has been said, you may have a very short statement. Yes, as long as it's, could you just come to the front so we can all hear clearly? Be very brief, please.
Thank you for allowing me to speak again. We are using the fallback against agricultural barn, and I thought it was just good to be clear that this is a working agricultural barn being used as a grain store. There would have to be another larger or more substantial agricultural grain store to be built in its place if we were to develop this barn. And part of the agreement with the landlord is that, as farmers have done over the last century, since horses were last used on the land, they do not like any ponds anywhere near any agricultural buildings. They do not like any trees anywhere near any agricultural buildings, and the preference of this is to have it all at a completely separate site, and is only proposed if we can do the more logical approach in just developing this one house on its own without a much larger, because I don't understand, I'm only a layman, apparently you can develop another agricultural farm with very easy planning permission farmer, but I don't understand, so I do apologise. Sorry, I'm completely.
I think that's, yeah, I think that's useful clarification for members. I'm not sure it was changed. I think I'm reading the meeting correctly. You want to add something, Andreas?
No, I just was going to say my grandfather kept donkeys and horses, and he's right.
My grandfather was the last person to cart the harvest in with horses back in 1963. So history with that. Just a useless aside. Okay. Does anybody else wish to add to the debate? Okay, we have a proposal and a seconder for the recommendation, which is refusal for the reasons listed. Let me go to the vote, please.
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Brown,
We're taking the vote, Councillor.
4.
Councillor Fisher,
4.
Councillor Fitch-Tillett,
4.
Councillor Heinrich,
4.
Councillor Holliday,
4.
Councillor Kershaw,
4.
Councillor Lloyd,
4.
Councillor Mancini Boyle,
4.
Councillor Pearce,
4.
Councillor Toy,
4.
Councillor Withington,
Yes.
and Councillor Yassimi.
Against.
That's 10 in favour and 2 against. So
The application is refused. Thank you. Right, so we return to the last main item on the agenda. And that is item 9. This is High Kelling, PF/20/1904, the demolition of the old TB annex and erection of a replacement 1.5-storey dwelling. We knocked this one around in some substantial detail a couple of meetings ago. So I would hope that we do not wish to have another prolonged debate on it. If I could ask, is it Officer Rubin presenting briefly? Okay. Officer Rubin, could you just give us a brief summary? I don't think we need to go through the full detail again. We had it a couple of meetings back. Okay.
No problem. Thank you, Chair. So you have item 9 on the agenda, PF 21904. It's for the demolition of an existing TB annex, an erection of replacement 1.5-storey dwelling and cart shed at land south of Brackenwood, Cromer Road, High Kelling. The report is on page 47 to 54 of the report pack. It was heard, as we've mentioned, at Development Committee on the 3rd of June, so you'll be very familiar with the site. It was deferred on the basis of the Development Committee requesting negotiation and amendments from the agent to address concerns relating to the extent of glazing on the proposed dwelling and its impact on dark skies of the area of outstanding natural beauty, the proposed roofing material, loss of bats due to demolition of the TB building, increased environmental standards and energy efficiency to reduce impacts on climate change, and construction vehicles using the shared access with the adjoining neighbours. The officer has put these matters to the agent as requested. The agent has considered these matters and has confirmed that no changes are being made to the proposed development, and as such, a decision today is being based upon the same plans that were before committee at the previous committee meeting in June. In summary, the main issues included the principle of development being accepted given the existence of an extant planning permission established through a certificate of lawfulness granted in 2014 and a considered sustainability of the location as established through appeal in 2016. The extant permission, as we're aware, remains a fallback position as previously discussed. Whilst the proposed dwelling contains a larger floor area than the dwelling approved in 1960, it is not considered that the proposed dwelling, as amended and reduced in size by the agent during the application, would be significantly or disproportionately larger than what could be built if the extant permission was completed and permitted development rights implemented. Clarification was given at the last meeting in terms of the height of the extant dwelling, which was approximately 6.5 to 7 metres, with the proposed dwelling being about approximately 6.6 metres. In addition, given the secluded nature of the site, which is set back from the roadside and surrounded by mature screening and trees, it is not considered that the proposed scheme would materially increase the impact of the dwelling on the appearance of the surrounding countryside, further taking into account similarly generously sized plots in the locality. The design solution materials are all considered to be an improvement upon the extant permission, with no objections raised by the landscape officer or AONB partnership. As previously outlined at the last meeting, there are no concerns in respect of amenity, trees, landscape impact, highway impact, flood risk or environmental considerations. In regards to protected species, the landscape officer has not raised any objection, subject to the securing of a European protected species licence and ecological mitigation and enhancement measures, all to be secured through condition. As referred to in the last committee meeting, matters of construction vehicle parking could be covered by condition requiring a construction management plan if required, as could stated sustainability measures mentioned under policy EN6 as outlined in the design and access statement, which included an air source heat pump, energy efficient lighting, and the possibility of photovoltaic panels on the roof. Addition of external lighting can also be controlled through condition. So overall, to conclude, the officer's recommendation remains one of conditional approval as summarised on pages 53 and 54 of the report. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Officer Rubin. Do you have anything to add for that?
Nothing further to add, Chairman, other than, of course, the debate was held substantively at the last meeting and we did arrive at a vote to defer.
Indeed we did, and I'm not sure there is much to add, but over to you, colleagues. Councillor Fitch-Tillett.
I have to say, Mr. Chairman, I never had a problem with this in the first place. So I'm happy to propose that we go with the officer's recommendation for approval.
Proposer, Councillor Toy.
Yeah, can I just have I obviously wasn't involved in the previous debate, but I obviously read the papers, but can I just have a clarification on conditioning? Because in the conditions, it says about permitted development rights, removal, etc., etc. And in the right on page 53, it says the proposed cart shed can be conditioned. Is it or is it not? No, I think it probably should be, but yeah, I just wanted some clarification on that, if possible. Thank you.
Officer Rubin, could you comment on that?
So I think the officer in their recommendations in the conditions suggests that yes, permitted development rights could be removed if required. So yeah, that is proposed in the list of conditions.
So just for clarity of the point raised, the condition, there will be a condition, or we rest a condition that the cart shed remains for parking and storage only and could not be in future converted to any other use.
Yes, that's correct. That can be a condition if required, yes.
I take it you're requesting that. That's all. Yeah.
Sorry, I think it should be taken in the
include
context of
that
where it
in
is.
the
Thank you.
recommendation.
Chairman, through
Happy
you,
with that.
we'll take that as read within the recommendation that's being proposed.
Thank you. Councillor Kershaw.
Yes, similarly, I think we debated this fully last time. I'm happy to second this recommendation.
Thank you. Councillor Pierce.
Just a question through you, Mr. Chairman, to Officer Rowson. Maybe you can help us a little bit. How can a scheme in 1960, which was approved, lawful, and then be changed to a condition like to a scheme like it is today, much bigger, much larger? And as we discussed and debated at the meeting, does the 1960 lawfulness have any relevance? Because at the end of the day, yeah, I'll be for it, but I'll vote for it. But I'm just asking for a point of clarification because once again, long-standing permissions to develop and agreements to be lawful are going to crop up again and again. And how can something that is over 60 years old still be relevant in today's world? And we're trying to be environmental friendly. Can I have some help, please?
Chairman, I think I can answer that in 2 words. It's the law. Where we are is a situation where case law over many years has highlighted that if certain works are undertaken on site, then it is considered that a lawful start has been made on the development. Case law stands that if that commencement has been made, then it is reasonable to come back to the local planning authority, in this case considerably later, and ask for consideration about the lawfulness of the commencement of those works. There's huge volumes of case law on what actually is a commencement and what isn't. It keeps Noel and me busy. And in this circumstance, you can see that in actual fact, in 2014, these applicants went through the proper channels. This is an old application. They actually obtained in 2014 a certificate of lawfulness relating to that older permission. That's set in stone. Some form of development can take place here, a bit like our friends with the grain dryer barn. Something can happen. So that has to be your fallback position. We have to accept that there is a principle in law that can be built out as established in the certificate of lawfulness and planning permission granted before I was born, Chairman. There we are.
Thank you for that, Mr. Chairman. It wasn't a grievance. It was just a bit of clarification because we've said this before and it's going to come again. And what with all the appeals that we get against any decisions that we seem to make, I'm sure that's going to be used again and again. Although we sit here and look at each individual application with our most learned eye that we can put on, I just thought on this situation it was a very fair question.
Thank you. Unless anybody has anything desperately want to raise on this one, maybe go to the vote. We have a proposer and second.
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Brown.
For.
Councillor Fisher.
For.
Councillor Fitch-Tillett. For. Councillor Heinrich.
For.
Councillor Holliday.
For.
Councillor Kershaw.
For.
Councillor Lloyd.
For.
Councillor Mancini Boyle.
For.
Councillor Pearce.
4.
Councillor Toy,
4.
Councillor Withington,
4.
and Councillor Yassini.
4.
That's unanimous.
Thank you. The application is approved. And that concludes the. Yes, the application section. We can now, after a considerable period of time, move to item 12 on appeals. You should have received a corrected version of that particular paper. An older one somehow got itself attached to the documents we received earlier. So,
Chairman, my apologies, some quality assurance for us to learn on. Linda and I will be looking at that matter of review before issue and make sure we can keep those errors to an absolute minimum if at all. Members, normally I'd suggest we take this as an issue which was taken as read. I would like to mention 2 appeal decisions that have come through. So you can see, members, in item A, the new appeals, we have a single new appeal, and forgive me those natives, this is Thurgarton. Thurgarton, right, thank you very much, I stand corrected. So that's a written representations appeal, as you can see. And then we have inquiries and hearings in progress. And you can see we have Bristol, Cley and Ryborough. Members, I need to update you, as I regularly do, on the matter of Arcady. I sent an email to the ward member earlier this week to confirm that we are concluding our negotiations with the applicants on this matter. We were presented with a further amendment, option 13, in the series of amendments considered at Arcady so far. And we also gave an opportunity for the applicant to comment on updated case law, a piece of case law relating to choice place, the decision made there. The applicant neglected to respond, declined to respond on the matter of choice place, but has obviously received a response from me on the matter of their amendments. I await firm commitment as to whether or not those amended plans will come forward. Be sure, members, I'll keep the ward member updated as I hear more. Simply, we have returned and responded both as an applications team and an appeals team on the matters of concern and consideration, indeed, including my learned colleague, Mr. Duran over there. So that's our update on Cley. Any questions on Cley, Ryborough or Bristol?
Thank you, Philip. It's just, how long will this go on with Arcadia? Is there a time limit? I mean, it seems there's obfuscation going on here. The longer it takes, the more established it becomes.
Through you, Chairman, clearly we're dealing with an enforcement notice that relates to the demolition of a house. It is important before we take someone's home away that we explore reasonably all avenues. I can tell you, Chairman, that I had an email in my inbox while I've been waiting for matters to progress today that commits to an extension of time up to the 30th of September. My aim will be, wherever possible, to bring that to one of our meetings in September. However, I need the applicant to consider their position with regard to the amendments, comments that I've returned to them, and decide whether or not they are going to submit anything further. At this moment, 30th of September is my deadline for making a decision. That's what I'll be telling the planning inspector. I'll endeavour to keep the local community and ward member updated.
Thank you for that. The ball being kicked down the road yet again. Hopefully can resolve this at some point in the future.
Chairman, item C, there's a raft of written representations. I think it would be wise if anyone has any queries or questions about those, if they want to raise them rather than have me go through that raft of current Thank you, Chairman. Let's move along. So, members, turning to the appeal decisions. 2 appeal decisions that I particularly want to raise with you. The first is at Ale Merton. This was relating to the discontinuance of use of land for aggregate recycling and erection of a self-built dwelling, along with ecological improvements. I I'm very disappointed with this decision, members, not simply the fact that the planning inspectorate chose to approve the case. That's their decision. They are the decision makers. I would confirm for you, members, that officers have been drawing up a letter of concern, which will be issued to the planning inspectorate. This decision, members, has some potential to undermine our standing on policies SS1 and SS2. The inspector found that the policies we were referring to carried limited or no weight. The inspector found in this single case for a single dwelling with limited evidence that those policies were not compliant with the MPPF and as such should not be considered to give any weight in the decision that was made. We have no issue with an approval of this application, this appeal. Don't get me wrong, that is the prerogative of the decision maker, and there are some merits associated with the discontinuance of use here. And it may be said that the building itself might not be too intrusive. However, the issue that relates to the inspector's findings on matters of policy are quite fundamental. I think it will be wise to share those letters with the chairman and vice chairman of this committee, and also the chairman of planning policy and built heritage. I was hoping to catch him before he had to leave. So that's the matter of Ale Merton. If anyone has any questions or would like to see a copy of that decision, I'll be happy to circulate it.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. I think we talk about reporting with a heavy heart. The next item at High Kelling relates to an enforcement appeal that was heard as a written representation. So you'll have heard me report on a number of occasions about the archery and air rifle use at High Kelling. I'm pleased to tell you, members, we now have a result. That result is one where the inspector found that there was significant merit associated with the community use. The inspector did not share our views about the harm arising associated with the activities in the woodland and the new buildings. We have a series of conditions to discharge. I've been writing to some members, portfolio holder particularly, about discharging those conditions. I can confirm for you we'll be able to discharge those conditions within the next month. I can also confirm for you, members, rather happily, that the successful appellant is moved to work with the district council. You may have seen some statements in local media, and is actually going to work with us to provide tree planting and look at the management and wider community uses on site. So a difficult appeal process, an enforcement process that has drawn on because of the sparsity of support where the planning inspectorate, available inspectors has been a significant issue. But I hope, members, that we can actually draw something positive from that outcome in the longer term.
Officer Alson, thank you for that. What's the costs? Do we get the cost paid to us, or does what happens with the enforcement costs and the hearing costs, etc.?
Thank you, Chairman. Through you, there was no application for costs. The application arose as a result of a long-standing breach of enforcement that we tackled some 2.5 years ago. The costs effectively have been largely borne in terms of officer time. It was important to follow the enforcement process. It was important to ensure, in this case, that the appellant was supported. They were unable to find any professional support to assist them. And clearly there was some beneficial uses associated with that site in terms of military veterans. So no costs other than the officer time, which does have a resourcing and a cost associated with it. And that was quite significant, but no actual financial cost.
Thank you.
Chairman, the remainder of appeals you can see that follow on. I don't really have anything formal to add on any of those. If any member wishes to raise a question about any of those dismissed or the single approved case, please raise them now. No court cases to report, Chairman. And so
thank you. That's always good news. Okay, that's item 12, 13. We have no urgent business. We have no private business. We don't need to exclude the public. Therefore, Declare the meeting closed at.
Excuse me, Mr. Chairman, I've got the signing in book here. There's about 5 missing, including yourself. So I'll put it down the
If you
front.
leave it on the end, I'm sure we'll all sign as we leave.